Setting the scene. What does the story about Shula and how she led her walking tour tell us about guiding? So, the first thing is that she was neatly dressed. Of course, she's representing the community. She had a warm, inviting smile, which always makes people warm to you immediately. And especially when people are strangers, they find it really difficult to engage. But very simply a warm smile that will help them come out of their shells a little bit. She greeted everyone who was waiting for the walking tour. And I've seen many, many walking tour guides who don't actually do this. It's like they're a little bit shy themselves and they're a bit nervous. And so they don't greet everybody, they just get started, which is also not a great way to start the walk. Now, she checked that everyone was actually there for the walk because I've seen walks where people arrive and they might just be standing around waiting for something else. And then you just start talking to them and encouraging them to follow you when they were actually not there for the walk at all. Or they could be waiting for another walk or some other event. So please always check that people are actually there for the event that you are leading, the walk that you're leading. Introduced herself, and that is really very important as well. People will be told, possibly at the tourist information, Dawn will be just outside the door there and she will be taking the walking tour. So if you introduce yourself, it also puts people at ease. They know that they're there for the right reasons and with the right person too, especially if there's more than one walk happening at that time. This I really like, and that's asking where everybody is from. It gives you an idea of the kinds of things that you might want to mention on the walk. For example, if lots of people are actually from the town where you're guiding, then of course you can add things in that they would find interesting. If people come from somewhere really nice and exotic and that you've never had on your walk before, it's nice to make them feel a bit special as well. So that's a nice way to engage is ask where people are from and of course how long they are in town. Because again, on the walk, you can point out things that they could do after the walk if they are in town for long enough. For example, visit the museum or pop into a certain cafe, etc. Also mention where you physically are standing. I know people have made their way there on their own, but if they do get lost or they're not familiar with the town, at least if you say to them, we are standing here in the market square and this is where we will be leaving from for our walking tour. Shula also in the story told them how long their walk would be, and this is very important because people are concerned that if they have a train to catch or they've got to be somewhere else or they've got reservations for something that they're not going to overrun. So it's important to tell them exactly how long the walk will be and also where you'll be ending the walk. So that they can also get their bearings. Because remember, you might be familiar with the town, but for strangers and people who are visiting, it can be a little bit overwhelming when things are very different. Shula very cleverly mentioned health and safety without being too scary. And she just mentioned about the cyclists. You might want to listen to the story again, but in a slightly light-hearted way. Of course, health and safety is very serious, but you don't want people to panic. And one of the tricks I always do use is cross the road with the whole group. So even if it's green, I wait until I have the whole group with me. And if it then turns red, then I'll wait for the next green light so that the group can move across the road with me at the same time. People panic if they're separated from the group, if they don't know the town, but also they feel like they're missing out because you might stop and talk about something that they're not familiar with or they'll miss out. She also got the small boy to come to the front, and that's great if you've got children. That makes them feel important, but also you can keep an eye on them. I know they're going to be with their parents, but it's also quite nice for you to know where they are. But they can also hear you and you can engage with them as well, especially when you're walking between different points. Sometimes it's quite nice to engage the children at that point because they might find the times when you stop things that they can't relate to or they might find it difficult to concentrate. So you can talk to them between the different sites that you're walking. Very important is to check that everyone can hear you and everyone can understand you. And she did this very well. There was a Japanese person on her tour. It is quite tricky if somebody's not going to understand you fully, but you can become a bit more animated with that person. Obviously, not for the whole group, but you can try and encourage them, even if they don't speak English, to enjoy the walk as well. But very important that you check that everyone can hear you and encourage them to come closer because people stand so far away. Um, that they can, if they come closer, then they can hear you and also feel a little bit more a part of the group. Now, she also pointed out things from where they started. I often see guides leaving their starting point and just walking to the next point. But actually, there's a lot to see from where you'll be standing. And this will actually put them into perspective as well of where they are in town. So point out what they can see from where you're starting. And this gets the tour going as well. And if you're doing a circular walk, then when you get back, you can go, look, that's the tower we spoke about at the very beginning. That's the painting on the wall I mentioned when we started. So it does give them a little bit more of an idea of where they are. This is very important. She told the group where they were going next. And you'll remember in the story, the guy stopped to take a photograph and then he turned around and the group had gone. But he remembered that Shula had said that they were going to go between two buildings. So if people do, and they will stop to take photographs, remember this is exciting for them. They come on this walk because they want to find out more. So it's important that you tell people if you're going to be moving out of view where you will be going so they can catch up with you. Very important is when it's warm, she stood the group in the shade, and it makes people very uncomfortable when it's hot if they're standing in the sun. But she also made sure that where they stood, they could still see what she was trying to point out. There's no point in saying behind that tree is a lovely balcony that you might want to look at. So work out before you go on the walk where these spots will be that will be appropriate. You might want to do the talking in the shade before you get somewhere and then point out what you've shown people. But this is all part of your planning. And she also made sure that everyone could see her as well. So it's important that you're able to show them what they're looking at, but they can see you too, especially for people who are hard of hearing. They might want to lip read or see your facial expressions. So that's important element as well. And she explained exactly what she wanted everyone to look at. In the story, remember, there were more than one buildings, blue buildings, but the one with the balcony is the one that stood out. So she explained the building with the balcony, you might be able to see that just to the left of the red roof, and then spoke about the history of that building or what was significant about it. Now, she also told what they could see. I think this, although it sounds quite self-explanatory, often people are excited about what they are telling their groups, and they will tell a lot of stories about things that nobody can see. It's important that you link things to what they can physically see. This really makes people feel a little bit uncomfortable if you tell them all these other things that are possible in other parts of the town, and we have got this building behind the town hall, and it's this and it's this, when they'll not see that building. It's fine if it links to a story or they want to know more, but it is really important to talk about exactly what it is that you can see and link stories to those things. Now, she also spoke about the peculiarities of the town, and that's important to say what makes the town special, not just what people can see, but why this town is so different or so unusual. And she also mentioned local government. So, how people like this, they like to compare how their towns or their countries are governed in relation to the walking tour. These are things that people can relate to. Now, she also mentioned quite a lot, and well, according to the story, about how people live in the community. And that again, people really like. They want to compare their lives to the lives of this town or this village or this country or this region. Now, when someone noticed something, she stopped to address it. Now, it's not always possible, and obviously within reason, but if someone asks you something that they've seen or they've noticed, If it's a long-winded story, say, thank you so much for bringing that up. And when we're almost at the end of the tour, will you remind me again when we get to the end, and I'll happily explain it to you. You might be walking through a big crowd and it becomes difficult to stop. But if it's possible, it's great to stop and address it right there and say, thank you so much for pointing that out. Yes, this is the story about what you've just noticed. She used the walls as a soundboard to bounce her voice. This is a lovely little trick, especially if you're leading a walk during a very busy time, or there's a lot of traffic, or there are a lot of other people. People find it difficult to listen when there's other sounds. So you can actually herd the group against a wall, and then you can face them so that your voice bounces off the wall behind them. Corners work beautifully for this. So if you can find places like that, that's that's great. Absolutely brilliant. Very important to speak slowly and clearly. So you might have a regional accent that they don't understand. English might not be their first language, but also when there's a lot of other noise, speaking clearly and slowly helps people to engage with what you're talking about. She finished the tour in the time expected. If the tour is an hour, going onto an hour and a half is not practical. It puts people, makes people very uneasy. They'll start dropping off. They won't actually stay to the very end. So you need to fulfill exactly what it is that you told them at the very beginning of the tour. And she also finished the tour where she said she would. So don't say we'll finish back here and then finish on the other side of town, because again, people will feel very uneasy because this is not a place that they are familiar with. Of course, you've got to thank everyone for coming and thanking them for wanting to find out more about your town. Now, in the story, Shula succeeded in the following. She gave information, she opened the visitor's eyes to several aspects of the town, and she also bonded the group. And those are the three most important things that you need to remember when you're guiding. It's about the information, giving them different aspects of the town, not just architecture, not just history, not just politics, but bonding the group together as well will make your walking tour very, very successful.